Well, welcome to the light board for February 14th, Valentine's Day. Uh, First thing we have is the call to order, and then we have meetings and minutes. We don't have any meetings, any minutes for this meeting. Is that correct, Warren?
That is correct.
Okay. And our next meeting is the 13th of March. And I wanted to provide, well, the 13th of March and then March 27th, April 10th, May 8th are the next few meetings. And part of my chair's update is the meeting that was planned for the public forum on the 28th. We're going to delay. And this is due to, Dave's leaving and other things that were ramping up, being a bit much. So we decided to push that off. And we will get to the board with specific date and time suggestions, but probably in end of March is what we would target. Is that correct, Jason?
Yes.
All right. And I do want to go over a rec policy. There's a donation program, but I also would like to get feedback on the rec policy statement. I got some feedback from Bianca, which was great, but I would like to hear from the other members as well. And I'll email you that just as a reminder, because I want to get that document done before we do the public forum. And that is my update. Jason, would you like to provide an update?
Absolutely. Thank you. You guys are going to get sick of me talking today. So first, I'll just start with the director's update and some things that have been happening around here. First, want to give some storm update. Obviously, we didn't have a lot of activity with snowfall yesterday, but we did spend a lot of time with preparations and making sure that we were ready for a storm response. And that is one thing that I'll be talking about a little bit later, is something that we're trying to improve our coordination and collaboration during outages so that we can sort of eliminate unnecessary time taken with sort of the telephone game of letting this person know and letting that person know. So I'm excited to bring some of the technology that I'm familiar with to that storm response and planning. And I just wanted to thank the line crew, the engineers, and all the staff who were here in the office and ready to respond to anything that happened. I wanted to give an update on the advanced metering project. So we've got over 1,300 residential meters installed, which is about 19% of the residential meters that we have. We have started receiving the commercial meters, but we're going to continue tackling these residential ones for now. The commercial meters will require a little bit more planning, coordination, and timings, because we want to make sure we don't affect the businesses when they're open. And we have one team of electrical contractors working for us now to increase the number of meters we can install. We're hoping to get a second team spun up soon. We're also even exploring the idea of getting some non-electricians to assist. There is a degree of communication and technology that goes along with these installations that you don't need to be a licensed electrician to handle. So we think we might be able to split up the teams, and then that would allow us to get maybe 3 or even 4 teams of contractors working out there in the field, as opposed to just 1 or 2. Carol and her team have been instrumental in kind of coordinating this and working with the vendor on that. We've had 23 customers so far opt out of the AMI meters out of about 8,700 meters that we're deploying. This is the time of year where we process the residential assistance renewals. So each year people apply for and enter this program based on the criteria. Numbers are slightly down this year, but we are reaching out to, I see Bianca, she's coming in now. Slightly down from where we were last year, but we are continuing to reach out to people, and we do spend a lot of time, the CSRs and their teams spend a lot of time making sure that people get the help they need with their applications. We're not, a large corporation, so we have that personal touch where we help people out if they have all the criteria that satisfies that. There's something connected to this, but I'm going to save it for the broadband update because it's related more to broadband. So as Brian mentioned, the board last meeting discussed the ability for CMLP to reimburse customers who might wish to donate their RECs after they're no longer receiving payments for those from some state program or an aggregator. We've had some internal meetings on this. We've also met with folks at E&E to discuss this, since they're the ones who kind of have access to the system that designates who owns the REC. We have confirmation that they can assist us and that this is going to be pretty seamless on their end. We've pulled all of the data that we need, and we're working on sort of matching the data that we have from the state with our customer database so that we know who each customer is. We've done some mock-ups of posters and information that we could send out to people. And we've basically been trying to identify the board's wishes, as communicated in the last meeting, to be prepared to make a presentation on the details of this at a future meeting when it's on the agenda, as Brian alluded to. So ideally, at the next meeting, we'll have an agenda topic focused on this. We'll kind of show everybody kind of the process that we see it to administer the program, and then we'll get the board to formally vote to approve that, and then we can put it into place. And I think the thought was the April-May timeframe, but just in terms of how easily we can get all these things set up. But again, we're open to feedback from the board when we're ready to present the program. I wanted to provide an update on the level 3 chargers at the Rideout. So we have been having some problems with the manufacturer in setting the time of use rates that were voted by the board. There's essentially 2 units, but there's only one control board. And so the control board that's in that unit is taking the new time of use rates that we've set, but the other unit's not getting that information. And they've been having a really difficult time sort of troubleshooting that. But we are moving that along and trying to get that done as soon as possible. It's a little bit more favorable for the chargers, so for the people charging. So at least it's not going in the wrong direction, but we're trying to get that set and programmed as soon as possible. We've had some really helpful volunteers that Jan has been in touch with to test the credit card functionality using the ChargePoint app, using the Flow app and other apps, and then also reporting back. So I really appreciate all the time that the volunteers have taken to pass that along. And we've ordered signs, and we'll proceed with installation of the signs and striping of the pavement as soon as the weather permits. We need something dry and a little bit warmer for the paint to adhere. And then we're working with the state on reimbursements for the expenditures we've made. I did want to point out, since we've talked about it a little bit before, the connectors that are on there are the CHAdeMO and the CCS connectors. We know that these are not compatible with Tesla for the eligibility for the grant. That's the connectors we had to put on there, and they have to stay intact for a year. There are adapters possible, and I mentioned this in the meeting materials, that Tesla owners could purchase, but we also know that they're pricey and we can't rely on people having those. And so as soon as we are out of that window where we're required to keep the existing connectors, we will be looking to upgrade some of the handles and connectors and plugs so that they're compatible with kind of the most common cars that we're seeing on the road in the NACS plug type. So I'd also wanted to draw your attention to the MWEC data on rates across the state that I put in the director's update materials. So the good news is that if you're a CMLP customer, your rates are about 30% lower than an Eversource customer. But keep in mind, we are the 4th highest MLP in the state, behind Princeton and Belmont, Chester, I think. So I just wanted to draw people's attention to that. The second graph that's in there, and I have them if people are interested in seeing them, but we can just refer to the meeting materials if you like, Brian. But that shows kind of our rates as related to other communities over time. So kind of where we fall in the pack, going over time. So we're just a couple months away from town meeting, so I'll be working with Matt and the rest of the senior leadership team to prepare for the enterprise hearing and get our materials ready for that. And so we'll be doing that for both broadband and the light plant, and I'll be handling both of those, but with support from staff. I wanted to mention the streetlights. We do have an update on the streetlights in the downtown area. If you'll recall, we had 3 streetlights fall to the ground in a 1 month or 2 month period, and then a fourth that fell, like popped open but didn't fall to the ground. The vendor has been very responsive with this. The vendor and the manufacturer have been very responsive and have submitted a proposal to make this right, and it is really favorable for us and involves as little impact on our operations as possible. So as you know, all of the sort of the vintage style lights have been taken down and some replacements have been deployed. The vendor feels that the latch is to blame here. The latch is supposed to have two connection points, one where you push in the latch to release it, but then you have to push it again, kind of like your car hood where you might pull it, but then there's a safety latch. The safety latch has kind of been mangled on all these units, and the manufacturer is not sure if this is a defect, the material was too thin, or if this happened during installation or subsequent service on any of the units. But the latch is definitely not how the latch should be, both in the units that failed and the units that we took down that had not yet failed. So they do plan on replacing the latch on all the units with a different latch that's a little bit more robust and that won't bend if it's pushed at the wrong angle. They're also going to add safety cables. One of the problems is that even if the latch opens, the head is just supposed to swing and it's welded in place on the other side, but that weld has been failing, and the manufacturer has changed the mechanism in the back where the latch attaches, or where the hinge attaches, and used bolts instead of a weld. So we kind of indicates to us that they know that this has been a failure point in the past, but they're going to be adding cables in the back so that if that weld were to fail, the streetlights would not fall to the ground. They might swing open, but they wouldn't fall to the ground. They're also going to send out a team from Canada where they manufacture these to oversee the replacement of all this hardware and the installation of those cables. They're also going to replace the heads that were damaged or fell to the ground at no cost to us. And then they're also going to work with our teams as we reinstall the original lights. I don't have a timeline on this, but we will be letting people know, providing the board, both the light board and the select board, with updates and news and notices when we have a firm date on when their team is coming down. And I just want to thank Joe and all the engineers and their time figuring this out and working with the vendor on this. I want to just briefly thank Jeff Cosgrove, our lead electrical engineer, and Joe Repoff, who were at the select board on Monday for their contributions for a Comcast poll petition. I just appreciate their expertise in weighing in and answering any questions that the board had. We do have a request from AT&T on a pole attachment for some small cell in the downtown area. The application doesn't specify the exact locations, but we've been working with them and having discussions with AT&T on improving coverage in the downtown area. So as soon as I get more information, I'll pass that along to the board. And then I just have one more big update. So yesterday during business hours, an electrician from the Northeast Correctional Facility reached out to me saying that they'd lost one of the 3 phases of power there. And this is the minimum security prison across the street from CMLP. I forwarded this to our engineering team and to Joe, and they immediately responded, went out there. It took all day to sort of uncover that this is a very poorly documented and very old system that they have in place, but it does seem to indicate that it's their equipment that failed, not CMLP's equipment. They had to do some digging and go through plans and find vaults and things, but they're bringing in additional electricians today, maybe already on site now, to look into this and hopefully get it repaired. They have been on generator power in the meantime because their large HVAC systems do require all 3 phases to operate properly. So, and we did notify the police department. Bianca, thank you for asking. Sorry, I haven't replied to your question, but we did notify the police department, and just so that they're aware and can reach out and offer any support that they might need during this time. We do expect a resolution soon, hopefully today.
Awesome.
And I'll pause there because I know I threw a lot at everybody, and see, Brian, if you have any questions.
Yeah, well, I'm going to let Warren go first. Warren.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. The first one on the street lights. Excuse me. These lights have been up for a while. It seems pretty weird and coincidental that several of them would fail all at once. Is that just coincidence, or is there some other explanation?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked to the police department. We've looked into potentially vandalism, but what we're seeing is on all the units that did not fall, The clips are in exactly the same state as the units that did fall, which is to say they were not holding on very well. And so we think that maybe a high wind event that happened earlier this year
Okay.
probably jarred some of them pretty loose. And then with the snow and ice and other things, that's probably what is responsible for the majority of them. But part of the problem is we don't have the exact timing on when all of them swung open. Because sometimes people found them on the ground and just kind of set them aside, and it wasn't until a day or two later. So they did sort of pull some surveillance, but there was definitely been no sign of anybody altering or throwing anything at the lights.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
My other question is, what's the implication for the light plant of the closing of the prison?
Yeah, actually, I have a plans to talk about that in later on in the agenda. So if
Oh.
you're okay, I can
Yeah,
address
we can
that.
wait till that.
Alice, do you have a question?
Just a quick one. First of all, thanks on the streetlights. It's kind of feeling like the Alaska Air door, where a single bolt blew the door off.
Yes.
So you have, I have to say, since you started, you have been fighting fires of some kind from day one. So thank you.
Yeah.
Your communication is really helpful to me, and I assume for the rest of the board as well. It's really good. Thank you. So here's my question. I'm sure somebody, maybe Brian, knows the answer. Is there anything that we can do to encourage or entice Tesla to install their own Tesla charging stations? So not at a cost to CMLP, but
Right.
I understand the constraints at Rideout. If
Yeah.
most of our drivers are Tesla, and we have a huge tourist event for the 250th, my guess is we'll see more EVs coming into town for that. Okay, is there anything do we have any leverage that we can pull?
Yeah, that's a great question about Tesla specifically, but what I can tell you is that the state has identified the Route 2 corridor, especially in the Concord area, as having a kind of a lack of convenient chargers off of that important, and heavily traveled route. So we have done some analysis and prepared some maps with existing charger locations, and then their goal kind of within 2 miles of Route 2, or obviously priority within a half mile, but then a mile and a mile and a half and 2 miles, and looking at possible options. I think part of the thing we're trying to do is be proactive about identifying the locations that are good for CMLP's infrastructure to have these, as opposed to areas where it would not be good. So obviously in like solar saturated areas where we have a lot of electricity, maybe good to put high demand things, and might help us in the long run. So Joe and his team have those maps and can start using that to maybe propose locations that might work. And from that, we can start looking at our own plans, at any state grants are available, or obviously reaching out to private entities. But that's a good question. I don't know if we've reached out directly to them. Joe might know, but I can definitely look into that and see if we can just be proactive about saying, hey, Tesla, this is a good location. We have the infrastructure and the power, and we're happy to work with you to that. Because I agree, having more chargers is just a better thing for adoption.
And I know that the National Park Service has a requirement, a policy to install charging stations at the national parks around the country. Have we worked with the National Park Service on Minuteman? That maybe we can build something together to install EV charging and the parkland at their expense, since they have a policy to do so.
Yeah, so again, I don't know of that, but I will look into this, and in my next director's update, I'll provide an update on those two topics. Things.
Yeah, and just to let people know, I pulled up the Tesla charging map for their superchargers, and they have a location in Lexington, right off the 95, which is rather close to Concord. So I think they generally wouldn't build another supercharger this close unless it was an urban area like downtown Boston. But we can always ask, and I think we should, but I don't know how. And thank you, Jason, for clarifying about the grant and how it was for CCS and CHAdeMO. And hopefully we can get a NACS cord attached to that in a year or so. And Pamela, I know you and Andy are having trouble with your car. and the adapter not working. I did read more specs about that, and I'm willing to work with you to try to figure out how to make that work. But that's where we are. I did have a question. Shoot, which was the topic? So you said that we had 23 people take the opt-out rate out of 2,700 installations so far on
So,
AMX.
yep, no, it's not just out of the, so we've got 1,300 meters installed. The 23 is everybody. We sent the notices to everybody to be able to opt out. So this is not just of the ones we've installed. This is 23 out of all the 8,700 meters that we would need to do.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no, I had the same question. Was it just of the ones we've done, or was it of all of them?
Right. And are you, there was a letter that went out, you said, for the 23 that responded. When you're doing these installations and you're talking to customers, is it something that's coming up as a question?
Not that I've heard. Carol, do you have any additional comments on that? Have you heard anybody during those conversations raise objection?
No, nothing has really come up about it. We're installing the opt-out meters as we're installing the new AMI meters. So right now it's been going okay and we haven't had any issues, knock on wood.
Great. Excellent. Alice, do you have another question?
She's shaking her
Your
head.
hand's still up, sorry.
She's working on it.
I had one more question. I mentioned this in an email to you, Jason, but I wanted to mention it here as well. Your broadband updates are great in that they created metrics that we continually measure performance against. And the MWAC data for the light plant is a great resource for us to kind of continually measure ourselves. So I hope to work with you on making that as relevant presentation of the information as possible, so that the board feels they can really understand that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. The rec donation program, I think I mentioned that we're going to bring that back to the board on the 17th of March to try to tell you the exact details of the program, get the blessing of the board to get it rolled out and going forward. What else in the electric update?
Residential assistance, Rex.
Well, I don't think we have had a formal greeting and hello from Michael. So Michael Hale, is that the right way to say your last name?
Yes.
Yeah, so Michael is a former MLP director and is helping Jason with the transition that we're in while we look for a new director. Michael, do you want to give us a little bit about you and say hello?
Sure. I don't usually wear a mask on a Zoom call, but I had some surgery this week on my face, so I'm just using this as a safeguard for this morning. The mask is more appropriate, believe me. So yes, my name is Michael Hale. I spent 32 years working for the town of Shrewsbury. The first 2/3 I spent in the town manager's office under municipal operations, and my last 11 I spent as the general manager of we call it Selco, Shrewsbury Electric and Cable Operations. Similar to Concord, we're both a municipal electric utility, and we also had one of 2 or 3 cable television plants that were municipally run in the state. I think what's unique about Shrewsbury is that it is the only cables operator in the town. There is no Comcast, there is no Spectrum, RCN, or any other provider. I would say that Concord is ahead of the curve with its deployment of fiber, and that when I left Shrewsbury, I had built up a cash reserve to build a fiber plant, and it is probably 40% built now throughout the town. So the town is converting from what was coax to 100% fiber to both the businesses and the residential dwellings in the town. I do have significant experience. I've been involved in leadership positions. I chaired the legislative committee of the 41 municipal light plants in Massachusetts for a year or two, and I sat on a board at Emwick. I look forward to working with Concord and its residents, and Jason has been outstanding to date.
Great. Well, thank you, and thanks for your help in this moment for Concord, and we appreciate your experience.
And I just would add that I'm more than willing to sit down with any board member who want to pick my brain or ask questions. But really, I feel one of my primary roles during this transition, other than helping Jason maybe with some technical issues, is that I'd like to get him or help and assist the board in getting a framework for in speaking to a number of people, what it really is that you're looking for in the next director for the utility. And with all the collective information that I gather, I intend to prepare a draft memo on really what is the ideal director, given the issues that are before the board today.
Yes, I think that is a wonderful effort, and I would encourage board members to meet with Michael to share their thoughts on that directly. But yeah, I think generally we're probably pretty progressive.
Yeah.
When compared to other MLPs.
Yep.
So I think you'll get a lot of things to that effect.
And to that point, I really think it's what the community wants. It's not what the individual director's personal beliefs are, because really the director has hired help for the community interests. So I think that'll be a key thing as you move forward.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Michael, and welcome. And
Thank you.
Jason, do you want to go to the broadband update?
Yep, I just have two things quickly to touch on broadband. The big one is really that the Affordable Connectivity Program is closed now for enrollment. So this is the ability for qualified individuals or households to get up to $30 per month off of their internet fees. As you know, we kind of rolled this out with our new tiers to say that we were now an eligible and qualifying entity. Our staff did a lot of work to sort of get this figured out. We talked to other MLPs to find out how they were handling this. And administratively, this was a lot of work to get done. And I'm sad to hear that it's already kind of winding down. But there is the option or possibility that they could add some funding to get this back up. I think they're going to continue to pay out existing people until April, but they stopped as of early February for accepting new people into the program. What I would kind of recommend is that we consider, because the number of people that might be eligible in Concord and because of the administrative burden of the ACP and the fact that it no longer exists now, that we consider a model that Shrewsbury had adopted, which is pick a flat rate, and they pick $20 a month, and find customers that are also eligible for their residential rate assistance program for the electric side, and then offer that subsidy to those people without sort of any additional burden on them. They've already qualified, they've already filled out the annual paperwork that they have to do for the electric or other utility rate assistance, and then we could just add a box that says, if you have broadband, check here or something, or we could even do that for them and just say, we see a broadband. And then we put them on this reduced rate and give them a lower cost internet service. So I would okay.
Sorry to interrupt. So this is because the other program is winding down?
Yeah, that program, it had funding from pandemic era funds to expand the Lifeline program, but now they've kind of run out of money and Congress has not authorized any more money for the program. I did see that the FCC commissioner is asking, to please reconsider this, but essentially as of now, they're not accepting new people, and it's going to be stopping funded in April. We saw very few people who could handle the sort of administrative burden on what they had to do to provide the information to them. And we have about 7 customers today who are on our rate assistance program for the electric side that also have broadband. So we're not talking about a huge number of people in Concord that sort of qualify for both. And just in terms of how difficult it has been for our staff to do and how difficult it is for the customers to do, it probably would save money to do this as opposed to a formal program like the ACP, even though the ACP is federal dollars and these are our dollars. If we're talking 7 people for $20 a month, that's not a huge amount of money compared with the staff time. I mean, we've spent hours and hours each week, and then we have to do monthly reports to the government to sort of match up the customers, and it's more burdensome for the end user too. So just wanted to put that out there as a possibility. And if you would like to put this on a future agenda, and I could kind of provide even more background, we can do that.
Could we put this on our next meeting, the 17th?
Yep.
So that we can have a plan in place when this program shuts off, our program clicks on seamless to customers.
Absolutely.
And I've noticed that as well, that some of these great grant opportunities end up to be a logistical burden financially. And yeah.
Well, and if we had had hundreds of customers eligible for this, then what I was proposing or what Shrewsbury does might not be advantageous. But with the numbers that we anticipate, even if it doubles, that would not be a very big burden compared with the administrative load on our staff. So, and then the only other update I wanted to mention is that next week we are going to be doing service impacting maintenance on the broadband network. So this is going to be, quarterly we do minor updates that are non-service impacting on all of our equipment, but every year we do the manufacturer's annual sort of firmware updates on all of our equipment. And this will be 2 updates for everything. So essentially all of the gear that everybody's home ONTs connect to will be updated. And then that will then push a firmware update to everybody's ONTs. Your ONT is the device that's in your residence or business that actually provides you the internet, is either connected to your router or your Wi-Fi access points. So we did this last year, and we'll do it, pretty much every year. But the one exciting thing about this year is it's not just stability and security. These are also going to be allowing us to finally spin up our cloud-based operations management system that we have with this vendor. So outage response and diagnosing problems and visibility into the network issues, like that will all increase by a huge factor once this is done. So we're really excited to get this this final update done. We've been doing updates on this for the last 3 months in the back end to prepare to get everything else ready. And so this is the last thing. So I'm really excited and proud of the work that Dale and his team have done to get this all ready. And so that's my last broadband update.
Great. Warren.
So, Jason, thanks for that update. With you playing the interim director role, you obviously don't have as much time to devote to broadband as you would have had if you weren't in that role. What's not getting done or at risk of falling behind?
I think that my wife and kids can probably answer that question the best. Obviously, like in the IT world, your job is to prioritize and attend to the things that are the most important. Luckily, I have a tremendous amount of staff around me that are supporting me in all these efforts. So it's not that things aren't going done, it's just that more people are giving more in this time. So I'm obviously giving more to the town, but so are many, many other people, dozens of other people that are helping. So we also rely on outside services, whether it's our help desk center or the vendor itself who makes this equipment. They have services. So for instance, during this upgrade, we've also contracted them to help them assist with some of these things that, if we had more staff, a second network engineer, or more of my time that we could have done. So we're leaning on everybody a little bit to make sure that we don't just stop monitoring things or doing those essential functions. But really, it's just we're asking more from people right now.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we are running a bit behind, about 10 minutes. So I'm going to move on to the E&E board position. Jason, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I'll give you some background on this. So E&E is Energy New England. Concord Municipal Light Plant is equity owner of Energy New England, and as such, we have a board position, a permanent board position on that organization to help shape the direction that they move in and to make strategic decisions about where things are going. We're also a member, you know, and an owner, so we receive the benefits and the resources that Energy New England has. Dave Wood was our former board member for E&E. And E&E's charter says that the light board or light commission in a municipality is the one that nominates and votes to appoint a member to this board. So we did talk to them and discuss this because we did kind of float around the issue of somebody else other than myself taking the position. But we've learned that it's really either directors or interim directors, and there's only once ever been an exception to that in their history, and that was when a light commission did not actually appoint an interim. So one of the commissioners themselves attended on the board. In my 120 days of expected service here, there's only going to be one meeting of this board, so I don't think of this as a hugely impactful thing, but I have been meeting with them and talking with E&E to make sure that this time isn't sort of a gap for us, that we have visibility into what they're doing, what their plans are, and that we have a voice. So I would be asking the board to nominate me and and hold a vote to appoint me to that position.
Great, thank you. And also, Dave Wood has gone to Wellesley, so I assume that they have appointed him to that board
Right.
as Wellesley's representative. So I'm sure you'll be there and
It'll be a reunion.
give
Yeah.
you cues on what needs to happen for Concord.
Yes.
Alice, I look to you as our great motion maker. Do you feel you can make a motion to appoint Jason to the E&E Directors Board? Oh, I think you're still muted.
That's the problem with having two screens.
Yeah.
I have to find the cursor and move it to the right one. Okay, I move to nominate or appoint. Is it appoint or nominate?
Say appoint.
Appoint.
I move to appoint Jason Baldwin to the position of director and member of E&E representing Concord on the E&E board.
Second,
I got a second from Warren. Bianca,
Yes.
Warren,
yes.
Alice?
Yes.
And I agree as well. Jason is absent. John is absent. Getting names mixed up now. Well, great. So you're appointed.
Thank you. All right, so we're 11 minutes behind, so I will pick things up. Actually, sorry, you go ahead.
All I'm going to do is hand it back off to you. So go right ahead.
So middle school solar updates. I want to provide the group some updates on this, and I'll try to go a little bit faster. I'm really excited to be part of this large and impactful project. I remember when it went to town meeting, and I've been kind of in the periphery since the beginning, but I've learned a lot more in the last few weeks about this project, and just want to provide an update to everybody on where things are going. So yesterday I attended the planning meeting. They have one every Tuesday. There's a planning meeting on Tuesday mornings and then a construction meeting on Tuesday afternoons. And so I had been in communication with Gail Dowd, who was our former CFO, who still is a town employee working on the middle school project. And she has been, reaching out, and is such a helpful asset to make sure that we're plugged in and that they're getting what they need from us. But I attended yesterday's meeting to meet directly with them. I'm actually just going to very briefly share my screen with because there's some acronyms that are involved in this, and they're very confusing. So I can definitely make up some time if I go more than 5 minutes, but I will try not to go longer than that. But can everybody see my screen now? Yep.
Yes, I can see.
So these are the players that we're going to talk about. And I feel like these are going to come up, so it's going to be helpful for the board and the public to know. So Hill is the project manager and OPM that's coordinating, and they're working for us, protecting our interests to make sure that everybody is aligned. SMMA is the architectural engineering firm. CTA is the construction companies actually doing the building. SDA is the Solar Design Associates. That is our firm that we've retained to do the design and work on the panels and this integrating the systems. PLM is the firm that is doing our engineering that works with us to create solutions when we're talking about interconnections or designing things. So, and again, I only have just 3 slides total, and we've already done the first one. So just advance here. So where we are right now is we have 2 big things that CMLP needs to participate in. The first one is the switchboard and vault design, and then the second one is the actual canopies and panels. So where we are right now is that SDA, Solar Design Associates, our firm that's working on designing the array and all the equipment, needs to provide us a preliminary design that we can give to PLM to design the vault. Now, the vault is where all this equipment, the switchboard, is going to go into. And the vault size and specs are important because that's where you're going to be pouring a concrete pad and bringing conduit into it. So obviously you don't want to have conduit that's not in the right place. It's not going to be within the vault. It's not going to be weather tight. So there's all these dependencies. So we're meeting with PLM this week with SDA's final designs or preliminary sort of final designs to get the vault specifications. And with those, we'll be giving them back to SDA to complete the final design. We'll also be giving them to SMMA to complete their design so that they can give that to CTA to actually do the work. So all of this relates to the vault, but within all of these, it's not really a true cascade like this because there's interdependencies, right? Like SDA needs information from SMMA for plans and design ideas or from as-builts from what's there already. And then all of this feeds into the estimating and construction costs for some of this work. And I'll just say that the staff are doing a tremendous job at trying to move all of the vendors along and all these moving pieces to make sure that we have everything ready so that CTA can do that prep work, get the vault and the pad poured and all the conduit ready so that we don't slow down the project in any way. Our number one goal is to, do this the right way and safely, but also not impact the timeline of the building. Our next goal is obviously to get it done as soon as possible, but the first 2 are definitely the highest priorities for us. And then the last thing that I'll just show is the canopies and panels. So we have an issue that the initial design by SDA for the canopies goes into the setback of this location. It's a 40-foot setback and it encroaches about 15 feet into that. So that's going to require variance from the ZBA. And we have been working with council and also staff at DPLM to make sure that we get all that we need ready for a ZBA appearance. And Council Anderson Krieger has been working with us and been preparing that. They'll be notifying abutters and getting that ready for the March meeting. But in the meantime, SDA is sort of got the final designs prepared and we'll be working with Hill on getting a third-party estimate before we ask for a change order from CTA. So kind of a lot of dependencies. I thought it might be easier to see on the screen, but those are the big things that we're trying to do now to make sure that we don't slow down the building progress. They have obviously a goal of getting into the building in February of next year. So we're basically about a year away from their ideal occupancy. And I think they're looking for permanent power around midsummer. And we don't have any indication that we're not going to meet that timeline. But again, we're working on this every day. And I think that I'll stop there, other than say that we're going to be attending these planning and design construction meetings going forward, just to make sure that nothing is missed. They're really gracious about trying to see to people's time and just focus on the important things that they need at that moment. And they've been great with communication. Both Hill and Gail have been keeping us in the loop, and they understand that we're short-staffed, and so we're relying on them to keep us in the loop and ask for what they need. But I just am really grateful for all the work that our staff are doing on this project, and I'll stop there.
So I know that back in June of 21, with this project, you've got so many stakeholders in the design and in the process that people tend to get off the same page at some point, and then you spend a lot of time trying to guess what the other distant group has done. So I found in June of 21, I just said, okay, let's do one meeting just focused on the array. We're going to have all the stakeholders. And that was very helpful to them because the schools found out that, oh, they're not going to get all the net metering benefits because it's a front of meter system. That was new to them and it should have been known at the time. Other things like that. So would it be helpful, do you think, in this process to, once you feel you've got a handle on what's going on, to have everybody at one table just to kind of update solely on the array and the switchgear and say, all right, does everybody know what everybody's doing? And we're all on the same page in what we're building.
Yeah, I mean, at those weekly meetings, we have town staff, we have the town manager, we have CMLP, we have the school, we have SMMA, and we have Hill, and then CTA in the afternoon. So, and then those are weekly. But I do think that, the light board or any other interested parties or school committee members, if they want to have an update, I can certainly talk to Lori and Carrie and see what their thoughts are on getting everybody back together just to kind of give an update and ask questions and align. If you're thinking more operational, we're definitely doing that already. But if you're thinking wider stakeholders, then absolutely we can look into seeing what we can schedule.
No, I was thinking more operational, and just because I know weekly meetings can cover everything to do with that project. Sometimes it's nice to have a focused meeting just on that point. Yeah, I don't think that this board needs to get involved again. I think you guys know what the boards and community want. It's the details of execution. I think that you got to make sure you're all on the same page. It makes things go a little easier. Any other board comments on this topic? Mark, you have a comment specifically on this one?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. I'm the select board member and a member of the middle school building committee, school building committee. So my question really is there anything that, or if there's anything that you think needs to be escalated to that level that represents a schedule risk? I'd love to hear about it. And I'd be happy to talk offline. The middle school building committee is meeting tomorrow. So please do.
I don't have anything right now that I think is a schedule risk, but I think at the end of this week, we'll know more from PLM and whether they think that all this can go. Again, we have been talking about temporary alternatives if we think that there's going to be a significant delay. Obviously, we'd rather not have to do things twice. It's just a waste of time, money, and then you're not going to have an ideal solution. But we are talking to Hill about the schedule. We feel like we're on track with that. If we feel like there's a risk, we'll definitely bring up those backup options so that we don't slow anybody down. And we know that we don't want to give anybody the excuse of a delay, even if it's not really on us. But again, our goals are getting this done safely the right way and not affecting the building schedule, and then getting the array, turned up and turned on. We don't want to work and kill ourselves to get the array on and generating power on February of next year, if that means there's going to be impacts to the schedule or the fields or the demolishing of the building or any other aspects of the project. We want to make sure that we do whatever we can now to focus on the prerequisites so that all these other firms can keep moving forward and not, say, well, this is a bottleneck here. So that's where we are.
Okay, I appreciate the focus. Thank you. And for those people who may not normally be following the middle school building project, it is and has been tracking quite well to the schedule so far. So that's good news, and we hope to keep it that way.
Great, thank you. All right, so is there any other questions about the middle school? I don't see any from members, so I'm going to move on to director transition update. Jason.
Thank you. So as everybody knows, on January 12th of this year, the director, Dave Wood, left, and Carrie, the town manager, has appointed me as interim director. Dave had been here for 29 years and serving in the director role for over 10 years. So, it was kind of a seismic change when he left. And so in the town manager's kind of message to the board, she talked about some of our goals in this interim time. And that was to review the organizational structure that we have and analyze our strategic plan to determine if we need to make tweaks or add things to that. We also wanted to receive feedback on communication, both to the board, the public, and then also solicit feedback from employees on, things that are working well or not working well, and any aspects of the operations that could be improved. So obviously it's a challenge, like doing the daily work of that and also doing these things, but I'm kind of used to coming into situations that need analysis and doing that. So I've been working on that, and all of the senior leadership team have been involved in these conversations, and they have a lot of stake in this game, and they, have been playing a huge role in making sure that we stay on top of our strategic goals and document some of our needs. So we've been having weekly team meetings with that group, and I've been having biweekly one-on-ones with all of the directors, 6 direct reports. I've also attended some division meetings, so we have each of these divisions have their own internal meetings. And so I've attended 2 of those, and I have 2 more scheduled, one for early March, and then a third was scheduled today, but unfortunately we had to move that. And then I'm also going to be meeting with every employee at CMLP just to collect feedback on what's working and just listen to them and find out kind of what their perspective is. And I think my thought on this is that, similar to an audit, you don't want people just to say how wonderful life is. You really want to hear what their thoughts are, and let them speak from the heart, and hear things that sometimes might not be positive things. You might want to say, well, this is a struggle, or we've tried to do this, but it's failed, or we had this initiative and it's gone nowhere. So I feel like we need to document those things. We need to listen to people, and we need to figure out how we can move forward and improve in those areas. We've also started tackling larger, more systemic, or specific issues to our organization, like storm response, internal procedures, inventory, and budgeting. We'd like to look at all of those processes, because sometimes these annual processes, or things that happen only during part of the year, the focus is on them when they're happening, but then after they're done, it's like, oh, well, we'll worry about that next year, and the next year comes and you do the same thing again. So we'd like to see if there's any room for improvement in those areas. We've also started talking about core values and guiding principles to identify what the team feels, all of us here in this building feel are important to them, and then discuss them with them, and then bring them to the public so that they know what our core values are. We talked about Michael. I had a little bit in here about him, but he kind of covered everything I was going to say, and I just really appreciate his insight and assistance. He knows how busy I am, and he's been doing everything he can to not bother me, but also provide me with useful information. So, Michael, I appreciate everything you're doing. Last week, the senior leadership team and I completed the design of a feedback form that focuses on the process and the selection of the next director. And the goal here was to help Carrie, identify the traits and characteristics that they're looking for in the next director, and also things like who should be on the panel, and what kind of questions should you ask, and what kind of presentation should be given. It's obviously all at her discretion what she decides, but I know she cares about what these people want too. And so this would just be more input that she can use in crafting the process she's going to go through for that. And then I do feel like this is not only great for the public, the board, and to help Carrie, but this is also going to help the next director when they're hired, because they're going to have a wealth of information, sort of, here you go, here's where we sit today, here's what people are looking for, here's the direction that we need to go in, here's what the community's goals are, and it's kind of going to be a roadmap for success, hopefully. And then I'll take all of this and I'll try to synthesize it into some documents, as Michael mentioned, whether they're reports. Some of them might be informal, some of them might be communications to Carrie only, some of them might be for the board or for the public or to post. But the goal is to generate information. We don't want to go through this exercise and just sort of say, okay, well, thank God we've got somebody here now, we can just forget about all that. We want to learn from this and grow. So, and that's where we are.
Great. And I apologize. I should have reread the agenda and remembered you were going to introduce Michael, and I stole your thunder. Is there any questions? If not, I'll keep moving forward. Oh, Warren.
Yeah, this is great that the staff are thinking about directions for the light plant so clearly and putting their input in. That's going to be key in terms of selecting the new director. What I want to know is, when is the board going to discuss their views on this and get their input into the town manager?
Yeah, we should. And I didn't want to do it too early. In the process, I wanted staff to really have a framework that they were
Yeah.
working on and then have us contribute. So I guess the next meeting, because we've got to keep this process moving. If any member wants to share their thoughts, please send a long, elaborate email to me and Carrie and Jason, and we'll definitely want to hear it. But Jason, do you mind if I add that again to the 14th agenda? I think that's the third thing I've asked for. So I think we're already piling it up for the 14th. Any other comments by members? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to kind of save some time, and we're going to go to the Solar Task Force warrant article presentation. And Jason, did you want, it says Laura on here, but did you want Dean to take this?
Absolutely. Dean is here. Yep, Dean is here, so absolutely.
If I can share my screen, that would be helpful, because I can't right now.
Yep, all that.
And Dean, for the board, the goal of this is to get our blessing on the article so that when you speak at the hearing, you could say that we're supportive or not supportive.
That's the goal.
Okay.
See if I've got the right thing to share here. Q14, that looks like the right one. I've got multiple PowerPoints open on my desktop, so hopefully I got the right one. Let's see, I'll put it in full share mode here. There's my little guy. Here he is down here. Okay. How's that look? Okay.
Looks good.
I was here on December 14th, which was just before I had to appear in front of the select board just to wave at you and say, hey, we're offering a warrant article this year. And everybody out of my way. And this was where we started. We started by really identifying a set of economically potentially useful places to put solar, any adjunct components that were required. The battery we decided was a very helpful thing. And we sort of threw everything into the mix and said, if we get our dream situation, we'll do all of these things. We weren't initially encouraged to do the CCHS roof. We really proposed doing a ground mount at the CCHS campus, but the school committee decided that that was less preferred. So can we please look at the roof? So we put the roof and the ground mount in as options. So it was a full package of this set of things. Came to $9.2 million. And you can see how much energy we would be able to generate. You can see that the battery was really the same spec as we had done in the CMS proposal, and it's anticipated to go in over there. And the control and monitoring component, through our study, we recognize that this sort of system will be critical for automated management of distributed energy resources, or DERs as they're known. Where are we from here? Why are my arrow keys not working? I don't know why. There we go. So when we studied each of these things, first we went to the ground mount at CCHS. The school committee, over the course of time, since that initial warrant article was proposed, has come back fairly strongly and said, this is really not acceptable to us. We don't want to have this here. We want to reserve our property for other uses if we can. There are already other ideas about what to do with that space. We're not really sure that those are really consistent with what you can do in there. We think of it more as a brownfield that's right there on the campus. There are two brownfields on that campus. One is anticipated to be covered with a track, and this one is really a drainage space that can't be used for any other purpose because the water needs to infiltrate there. You can't put a building there. You can't do really anything with this space. But if you were to mount solar above it, the water would then drain off the panels down into the catchment area. And so it's a wonderful dual use, but the school committee wants to reserve it for potential other future purposes. So it remains in our solar planning report because we still think it's a good thing. And it showed the best financials of any of the things we were evaluating. One of the metrics that we can get from some of the studies that we're using something from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL. They have a whole product that's it's a freeware service that you can use to study how much energy can be generated, how much the energy value will be, et cetera, et cetera. And we've used that to model some of these systems. It appears that we can generate energy for about, if the panels will last 30 years, the average cost of generating the energy on this ground mount system would be about 10 cents, a little over 10 cents a kilowatt hour over the life of the system. If the life only lasts 20 years, those extra 10 years of relatively low cost usage kind of get trimmed off, those extra 10 years, and the cost would be about a little over 11 cents on a system like this. This was the most beneficial financially from any of the systems that we were studying. The landfill expansion is a challenging site. It wasn't built out originally because it was too heavily sloped. We built on the top of the site, which was fairly flat. It was a challenge even then because we had to come up with mounting strategies that did not impact the cap. But with a slope and the cap, we couldn't build it at the time. We feel as though technologies in the last 10 years have been developed to build on more sloped spaces, and we have not yet validated whether ours is too sloped, how much we can actually do over there, and the fact that we have yet to validate this may force the delay of this component until the next town meeting. We're not sure we're going to be able to make this validation and make this analysis finish before we get to town meeting. The only estimate we have for how much energy potential is possible over there is a verbal estimate that we got from Kearsarge. And the cost to construct is also not validated. We're using rule of thumb numbers of $1.50 a watt for ground mount, about $2.50 a watt for roof mount, and about $3.50 a watt for canopy. Because this is a complex ground mount, we decided to add 25 cents to the $1.50. That's a little more than the former director, Dave Wood. Dave Wood recommended a 10% lift on the $1.50. We added a quarter instead of 15 cents. And even with these numbers, the cost of generating energy on this is about 13 cents a kilowatt hour with a 20-year life cycle. It gets a little better in the 12-cent range for a 30-year life cycle, but these are all extremely shaky numbers at this point because we just have yet to fully validate this site. So that may be forced off the menu at town meeting because we really don't know yet whether we'll be fully ready. The school committee was very enthusiastic about doing a roof mount over there. And we're less inclined to do it. It's preferred, but we only started this approval like a week ago. They finally came to their meeting and said, yes, you can get up on the roof, you can do an analysis, we want you to come. And yet we still do not have full buy-in from the school committee on some of the points that we really are prerequisites for having this go forward. We need a firm agreement from the schools that all energy revenue generated by the panels that we put on the roof and that we agree to maintain and pay for from the light plant, all that revenue is going to flow to the light plant. There isn't a lease payment. There isn't an energy cost reduction to the schools. They're just hosting it. And if the light plant is paying for it, the light plant will retain all the revenue from it. This is the most expensive of all the sites. It's not particularly beneficial. You can see if the panels only were to last 20 years, it's going to cost us almost 16 cents a kilowatt hour to generate that energy. If they do last the full warranty lifetime of 30 years, we can get that number down to about 12, a little over 12 cents. But that's still not great. We're not going to be able to make any money on this. In fact, in this particular implementation, the net present value of the implementation is negative if we go through that process. The battery that we've specified is helpful for stabilizing the system. It's generally it has a broader value, and it brings value to the set of projects that we're trying to do. It is the most economically beneficial. It's far more beneficial economically in generating net present value or other benefit to the light plant than these solar installations are. The main thing that it's good for is providing grid resiliency. And it's not something that is easily quantifiable, but the economic value and peak shaving, both capacity payments and RMS Schedule 9 payments, is where you really draw benefit from installing a battery. So we feel as though this is, I don't have this, I have to work with Laura on exactly how that was modeled for the CMS, but we expect that to be the exact same modeling because we're specifying basically the exact same battery here that was specified in the CMS models. The control and management system is something that early on we identified as being something that's going to be necessary for managing these increased sets of distributed energy resources, both batteries and solar arrays, because today we already recognize solar saturation as a problem. And we've identified a component set called microgrid management, which is a distinct set of skills that can be automated by a system like this. We put a number in the article, which is for a feasibility study for a future load analysis with battery use cases, and then for acquisition and configuration of a system. However, the light plant, as Jason has identified in all of the things he's had to say today, has a lot of things on its plate. They're doing numerous projects. They're installing AMI. They're studying SCADA. They have the domain metering, the metering domain thing that they're doing out at the substation. And the set of things that they're doing will allow these systems to operate, but there won't be the levels of automation that a microgrid management platform would provide. So they can protect the network with metering domain. Any excess energy will flow out past the substation. They can manage the battery with an outsourced service potentially from E&E, who can get the capacity and RNS benefits on a monthly basis to make sure that we're getting maximum value out of the battery. So there are ways around doing this where we would not need a control and management system, but we feel at the Solar Task Force that such a system would be complementary to all the things that are already in the queue at the light plant. The question is, do they have the bandwidth to take on yet another infrastructure project? So that's the open question regarding this item. We have it on the menu right now for the town meeting, but we have to continue to work with the light plant to see if we keep it on. So where are we? We're anticipating a reduced motion when we get to town meeting. We're going to move the roof and the battery. We still need to clarify with the schools exactly how the finances are going to work, but we think we'll get through that. So we're going to move the roof and the battery. The landfill and the control system are currently both TBD. We don't know. I remain optimistic that both of those can stay in the mix, and the drainage basin is at this point been deleted from our anticipated motion. So the totals with contingency could range at this point from about 4.5 million at the low end for just CCHS roof and the battery, up to 8.35, which would include the full landfill as we've specified it so far, but that could change dramatically. There's a lot of moving pieces in there, like how big is it? You know, how much is it going to cost per watt to build, et cetera. And if we add the control system, it could get up to about 8.35 million. So that's where I am. This is a big thing. This is our article text. I'm not going to spend any time on that. And I'm done. If you have any questions, I'm open to hear what you have to say.
Great. Well, thank you, Dean. I have tons of questions with Bianca. Why don't you start us off? You had your hand up pretty
Yep.
early.
All right, well, thank you, Dean, for this great presentation. I just actually have, I don't know if they're questions, but more like 3 comments. The first is, have we or you or somebody checked if there's any funds available through the Inflation Reduction Act? I know Senator Markey's office has office hours on it.
I neglected to mention that, okay?
Okay.
All of the analysis that we have done anticipates us receiving full payout. The main pieces of the Inflation Reduction Act that would impact these projects, they anticipate 30% as an incentive program. However, because we're a municipality and we can take advantage of municipal bond debt issuance, that is, the 30% is reduced to 25.5%, and those numbers have been included. The amounts that you see on the warrant article are for the full build out, but our modeling for how much value we can get and what the cost of generating the energy will be all include getting these grants. So yes.
Okay, excellent. Then that leads me to my other point on the issuance of the bond. So I spent 20 years on the fixed income side dealing with bonds, and not necessarily municipal, but it was on the sovereign and sovereign owned entities side. I know, so I looked into it. Looks like we have, Moody's has given the town of Concord, AAA rating. But as far as I know, I emailed Matt Cummings. He says we don't have, the CMLP did not get a rating itself because the bonds are issued through the town. Now, I think there may be, I'm not saying that there is, but I think there might be some benefit in getting these bonds issued from CMLP, as the CMLP as an entity. CMLP would of course is of course owned by the town, so the town rating would then come over CMLP, and CMLP would have to have its own rating. But if we do that, there may be, and I'm happy to look into that a little bit in case it's of interest. Obviously, it doesn't affect the warrant article, right? Because that's like all part of the town. But I'm just saying the issuing entity.
Well, it does affect the warrant article. So
what's that?
The warrant article, I don't think I can change the language at this point because it's issued. But as I understand it, and I am not a lawyer, okay, the town needs to be the final issuer of the bonds, even though the language of the warrant article says that the bonds will be at the first payer, or the place where the funds will come from is CMLP. If CMLP were to issue the bonds and not have the backstop of the town of Concord,
that wouldn't. Yeah, they would always have the backstop.
Well,
of the town of Concord,
then the town of Concord has to be the issuer.
I'm gonna interrupt right now, just because we're discussing how we're going to finance something that we haven't got approval for. So I would rather we focus on the non-finance components of this.
That's fine with me. But I guess what I'll say is the language that was used for the CMS arrays is the same language that's used here, where CMLP is the payer of the bond debt service, and Concord is the issuer of record. So, and this is how the town's doing it. So
okay. And then this is just one last point I'd like to offer is on the feasibility studies, to the extent that, and again, it depends on timing, of course, but to the extent that we have time and wherewithal, we could potentially get some graduate students from UC Berkeley's ERG program, the Energy Resources Group, to help with this feasibility study. there is there's always a fee or whatnot, but it's at a much reduced rate. I am an alum of the Graduate School of Public Policy there, and we worked closely with the Energy and Resources Group. And every year I get emails, do you have a project for our, new graduating class to work on? So there's capstone projects, they can come in, and that's the big focus for the school there is energy and feasibility studies. So I just wanted to put that out there in case it's of interest.
It's certainly of interest. We do have a timing.
We'll
question.
get to the
That is,
feasibility.
we're trying to get this ready for town meeting, so that's why we probably have to go to a professional group to get it done.
Yeah. All right, Warren.
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. Thanks for the presentation, Dean. Given what you said, has the school committee raised any credible use for that drainage basin that they could possibly use it for?
The objections to the drainage basin are not. I don't really give them a lot of traction. One of the possibilities that they're suggesting is that the 250th committee wants to plant trees in that area. And that would, of course, create a shading problem. I've reached out to the 250th committee, and we think that we can work out a collaborative way in which trees are planted in a space that wouldn't shade the basin. They have not really identified any possible way to otherwise use the basin. And they have suggested that by putting solar arrays up, we would impact their impervious surface count of the lot. There is an impervious surface restriction on the lot, and that this would add to it. I think that may be a red herring, because the drainage off the panels would be into an engineered space that's engineered to accept water for the purposes of impervious surface, engineering.
Yeah.
So I haven't really found any of their arguments about other uses to be reasonable. And I think it's still,
Well, good
we're
luck
gonna
with
leave it on
that.
our list. We're gonna
Good
leave
luck.
it.
And my comment is, I would, of course, defer to the good work you're doing and the folks on the staff are doing. But given what you said, it seems the control system may be premature to be including at this point, and I'm not sure why we wouldn't consider delaying it till next year where there's time to think about it, but I leave that to you folks.
I fully expect to be working with Jason and Laura Scott to understand, whether it could be done in their workflow, or whether it's helpful or problematic. So it's certainly I put it in the TBD category, Warren. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Alice, your thoughts?
Yeah, a quick question. So it sounds like, Dean, that there will be a change in the language. Is that something that happens at town meeting or before? At what point right now it's written for 9 million.
Right.
How do you make that recommendation for 4.5 million as the total for putting in solar? I think cost is a big issue this year as the town looks at, competing budget input. So how does it happen? Is it public hearing stage? Is it at town meeting?
Well, at the first hearing that we're due to show up at is March 7th with the finance committee. We hope to have better and crisper information by then, but it's likely that we'll get all the way to town meeting before the number is finalized. And really, in terms of changing it, it mostly amounts to a handout on the table that says this exact same language with a different number in it. So
and that's not an unusual process.
And it's within scope to trim back the number. So that's totally fine.
It's just that messaging is really important to people who are
It
trying
is.
to balance the cost of the town.
We kind of swung for the fences, so to speak, Alice.
Yeah, I know.
Trying to get everything we could, and we're going to take what we can get.
Yeah.
And anything we get, we're considering a win. We haven't built any solar in 10 years in town, so anything we can do is going to be a win.
Agree with that. So my only other thought is, um, I, I don't know how to say this politically correct. It feels like without a willing partner at the school, we have a very long uphill battle. It sounds like we have a very hesitant partner who is not much of a partner. And this is critical because all of the infrastructure and construction happens at their site. So I'm wondering, do we have enough time between now and town meeting to build that goodwill and come in together? Because it's very difficult to overcome the school's reluctance to participate in this. You know, I hear they will have no cost. They will have, you know, everything will be funded through a bond issued by CMLP, which of course we have to look at from our budget as well, and what that does to rates. But I'm wondering how, if we don't have much time to bring the schools into the fold as true partners in desiring it.
Well, I'll just say this about it. Let's just say it's been a bit of a rocky path, but I believe that we're getting onto the same page. We have a little further to go, which is that we need, we just need sign off on the financial components. That I believe that in their last meeting, the sense of the meeting was extremely positive on building it on the roof. That's very positive. And they're interested in exploring actually siting a battery at the campus if there's any, ancillary benefit that can be derived from having the battery on the campus. So I think that we are now in the right place. There was a little stumble at the end of their meeting where the motion that was offered and voted didn't include all of the specifics that the solar task force had asked for, and we just need to sort of like tie that knot. But otherwise, I believe that the school committee is now, fully engaged, Al. So I'm not too worried about getting to town meeting, not being arm in arm with them as willing partners.
I didn't hear that in your presentation, so that's why I'm responding to it. I'm hearing much more of the concern. So maybe your public hearing, it might be a little more positive facing if you've got their support. Can't overstate it, but that's a big hurdle.
Yep.
Yeah, my comments, you all done, Alice?
Yeah.
All right. So my comments, I had a similar one to that, which was in your presentation to us, you went through each slide's problems and not enough on the benefits. So when you go to the hearing, I think the focus has to be on, this is a good investment of town money to do this project, and here's why. Yes, we've got some things to work out, but don't focus on those. Focus on the value that this would bring. Because I know the landfill is a great project if we can get it done. That could really, with a battery there and extra capacity and generation would be of great value. I have a lot of reservations about the schools and their true willingness to do this. I've noticed a pattern of they say they want to do these things as long as you pay for it. And that's a problem, because I know when we did the middle school project, we fulfilled a lot of their net zero goals for that building. And the light plant put up the funding to do the array and other things, but they were still pressing us for, what do we get? And I worry that this is going to be, we want all the benefits, none of the expense kind of partnership, which really isn't a partnership. It's really a gifting, which is something very different. So those are my thoughts and reservations. I know you've worked hard on those calculations. I wish Laura was here to give her. Oh, Laura,
She's here.
Yes.
Oh,
Laura is here.
hi, Laura. What are your thoughts about the financial models being used? Do you feel that these values being shown in the slides are really what we're going to pay, or are we, you know, because I know we went through this with the middle school project, and I know there's a lot of changes to how the math has been done. So I want your take on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I first of all want to apologize to Dean and Wendy in particular. I haven't been available this week. I've been ill, to kind of look over these numbers and, pre this meeting, so we didn't have to do this during the meeting. But I did listen to Dean's presentation, and I do have some questions. It seemed that the slope being priced at 13 cents might have been a bit high. 13 cents is I believe was the 30-year NPV, because the assumption was $1.75 per watt for the installation, and the CCH rooftop was shown as only 12.2 cents 30-year NPV, while the capital cost there was $2.50. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I actually have higher hopes that the slope will come in lower. I'm not promising it at this point. I think my biggest question on the slope is it truly feasible? It is a very steep slope as far as we can tell. We've done some preliminary looks at it. We think it's over 20% in some locations, which is really, really steep. And so, if it's doable, Kearsarge has only verbally given us offers that suggest that the slope would be less than 10 cents.
So Laura, to clarify, make sure we're not talking about apples and oranges, the number that I showed for the slope over at the landfill, which was over 13 cents, was a 20-year number. I don't have a 30-year number for that. I just didn't run the model twice on that one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And the 20-year number on the roof is over 15 cents. So the roof is more expensive than the landfill.
That makes sense.
It comes down to 12 cents if you can run the panels for 30 years on the roof, but yeah. So it is less expensive. If I ran a 30-year model over on the landfill, it would probably be down in the 10 or 11 cents range, something like that.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense, Dean. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I just didn't run a 30-year model on that one. I didn't have it handy, and I couldn't run. I just ran out of time yesterday to run another model.
I understand. So I would like to work with Wendy and really get more confidence in these, Brian. But on the face of it, the numbers are not completely outrageous. We've known that solar is probably going to be, if you build it in town, probably going to be 10 cents or more, depending on, that's with the Inflation Reduction Act.
That's all these numbers include Inflation Reduction Act incentives.
So it's not a cheap way to go. And the other thing I would hope to share with you all is what the debt load would look like for CMLP. Jason, am I allowed to share my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So this is probably not the best view of this. How can I make this bigger, Jason?
Double click word
Lower
home
right
would help.
Usually lower right. Well, this is not.
You can also hide your menu bar if you double click the word home next to file at the top of the screen. Double click that. Do it again. And now on the lower right hand corner.
On the format area, hit that little X on the upper right. Plot area.
Yeah, I don't think it'll get bigger that way, but yeah.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
I think this is big enough.
Okay, so let me just explain what this is. These dark colored ones are existing debt that we have from previous borrowing. So like the black is what's left over from having refurbished the warehouse and Station 219. That was originally a $3.9 million bond that concludes in 2027. The little tiny white piece here is the remains of WR Grace. That was a little $172,000 bond that's due to expire in 2024. And the other existing piece of debt we have is from the original smart grid, right? That started in, I guess, 2011. That was a $4 million borrowing, and that's supposed to end in 2026. So just visually, these dark things are kind of the level of load of debt we've been carrying. And this is, I'm sorry, I should have explained. The y-axis here is both the annual principal and interest expense. So it combines the two financing activities together to show you what our total finance expense is for the year, per year. These other redder numbers are the new debt we're talking about. We can see in yellow, this is the $3 million bond for the current AMI project that we're proposing to pay off in 10 years. The dark red is the middle school solar and battery. You can see kind of the debt load that adds to the light plant. And then I apologize, Dean, this is the full 9.2 million. I didn't have your lower figure when I did this.
That's fine.
So, it's the full 9.2, so obviously it'd be less if it was less. But this shows if you feathered that in and paid that off over 20 years, the additional that it would add to CMLP. So the difference between carrying a debt burden of 500,000 a year, and 2.3 million in the highest year is $1.9 million, which on per kilowatt hour basis is about, it would increase rates about $0.0110. And for that average customer you saw on the MWEC slides, that'd be about another $8, which would move us up from fourth most expensive to third most expensive. So it wouldn't, it wouldn't double rates, but it would present, a level of interest and principal expense that we have not been experiencing in the recent past that would tend to put, upward pressure on rates.
I'll just comment that upward pressure is mitigated in the bright red and in the hashed red by the energy you generate. It's not fully mitigated, but you're generating energy there, which will actually give you something else on the other side of the ledger. So you can't really credit all of this as a rate increase, so to speak. There is the solar projects and the batteries included will generate their own revenue benefits that you need to also account for.
Yeah, fair enough. So this is just a chart of, finance expense.
Right.
And it doesn't show, as Dean's saying, you would see a consequent reduction in energy expense for the amount of energy generated by the solar panels that we're invested in. So
Right.
that's the point, Dean. And yeah, this does not capture that.
Right. And this is a very good and important data point, but not the full picture. So I think of Princeton and their rates are the highest because they built, they're very small. They're much smaller than us, and they built their own wind turbine and they have a debt load from that makes their rates quite high. But they do get benefit from it, but they found that they just sold that energy. So it's a component. It's important to understand. And in your other page showed the amount of debt. So that calculation there, where the 1.88 divided by the sales volume, creating a cost per kilowatt. I think that's important to understand because for every $2 million we're adding to the ratepayers 1.25 roughly cents per kilowatt. Now, those investments, if they're done smartly, provide greater value net on all factors to the ratepayers. But debt load is something that we haven't had in the past that is at these levels, and that's important to understand. So do you feel, Laura, that the numbers that were in the presentation are the calculation you would use like you did for the middle school? We didn't utilize open source calculations. We were more focused on our expenses and the expected project cost. Give me your thoughts on the two models.
Without specifically rerunning the numbers through my own model, Brian, I would to give you what you want, I would need to do that and come up with a detailed list that shows you in each instance where there might be a variance between the way I would look at it and the NREL model.
That's a lot.
Well, I don't mind doing it, and I'm happy to do it. I guess I would just say, I don't think the differences are going to be order of magnitude different. I think they're going to be adjustments, if you will.
All right, so you feel that the numbers being presented are roughly what we could work with.
Yeah.
Doing the work. That's okay. That's important. That gives me confidence in the presentation numbers. All right, so I see Bianca has another question.
I just wanted to know what the interest rate, what interest rates we're talking about, Laura?
5%.
5%? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Great. We're the next, so this is the discussion on the warrant article. Our next up is we're going to go to the feasibility funding question.
Wendy had her hand up.
What's that?
Wendy had her hand up.
Yeah, do you feel Wendy, do you want to contribute?
Brian, yeah, just quickly, we did reach out to Anthony Saldi around what we should expect for debt, bond, interest, and he gave us 3% based on his bond expertise and said 3% is reasonable, 3.5% is conservative. And he referenced a bond that Lexington got at 2.88%. So we were using 3% in our modeling, just so people are aware. But, devil's in the detail. We'll follow up with Laura.
Yeah.
Good comment on that.
And I'm just trying to keep us moving because I want to do
And our early modeling, we use 4 also. We've used 4.
Yeah. So what I want from the board is I want to get a motion that says, we feel we can support or not support the article as it is today for town meeting, so that Dean can go to his hearing and say if he has or doesn't have support from the board. Do you want to go right to a motion and save time, or would you like to go around and I'll ask members their thoughts? Anyone have a preference? I'm looking at board members. No? Okay. So, Alice, do you mind making a motion to support the article from the light board?
I can do that, but a straw poll might be more useful at this point. I'm
Okay.
not convinced that we're rushing oftentimes this board takes more than a single meeting to have its position on the record of whether we support or not support an article. So once we support this article, it's not just for one-time use as a strategy for the hearing, it becomes the board's position. And I think there's a lot of moving pieces in this still that it seems early in the process for us to form an opinion about whether we support this in full as is. What if the language doesn't get approved at town meeting and the estimates we don't have the final thing here to vote on. So I worry. I can make the motion and let the board choose, but we have somewhat of a risk to vote on something that's still not fully firmed up with numbers that we have confidence in.
This is what I wanted to hear from members on that. So I view this as a simple town meeting. Do you want to put aside some money to build arrays and have that paid back through rates at CMLP? And then there's an amount on the warrant article. What happens is we tend to focus on the specific project and the details and so forth, and we get distracted from that question into the minutia of how. So I'd like the board to show support for getting these projects done in a way, but it doesn't have to be, the board ultimately would have to approve the debt and approve the project going forward. Because once this gets approved from town meeting, that just says town meeting says you can. It doesn't say you have to. So the board can still get through those details on the execution of these projects.
Can you put the language up for what is in the warrant? Okay, somebody, so we know when we vote today, we're voting for that language. Hearing from Dean, it's very different, but that's what's on the warrant. So that would be helpful to know. What
Yeah.
is this? Does it say a general, we want to set aside $1.5 million or $9 million for solar installations in town? Or does it say specifically?
It has more
the high school?
specifics.
So that's what we're voting on.
Yeah, Dean, do you mind sharing the language of the article?
Sure. Let's see, where is that?
I understand Dean's urgency to be able to
Yeah.
go with confidence that CMLP board is fully behind it. But that urgency shouldn't be the reason that we vote if we're not comfortable yet with the substance. And there are a lot of moving parts. I can be a minority voice. Let's hear from
Well,
others.
let's hear Warren's thoughts. I saw you have your hand up for a second and put it down. So Warren,
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, the reason for considering a vote is to strengthen Dean's position when he goes into the meeting in the near term. I would think we could do that without a formal vote in support of the article text at the moment, but instead going on record as saying we applaud the progress the committee has made, and we want to see this move forward to town meeting, and we'll be taking a formal vote on the exact article text later.
I think that's a good position, Warren, for the board, from what I'm sensing. Bianca, would you agree with Warren's position, or would you like a stronger declaration that we're supporting this?
Yeah, so yeah, I think, and especially now that I'm looking at the article text, I do think we need to make a more general rather than a vote on the article text, because right now it says it's a general obligation bond. And a general obligation bond will be the general obligation of the town via the taxes collected, and that's definitely not, I think, what we're going for here.
It does say later in the text that it will be paid by rates. Where is that language?
Very end, it says to be repaid in the first instance from revenues of the Concord Municipal Light Plant.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to go into the whole bonding question because it's a good to ask that question, Bianca, but you're changing the norm. And we can't really do that on the fly, especially with how the town manages finances and who bonds what. So that's a great question to ask, but I don't think we can resolve it here. And I'd like to.
Right. So that's why I don't think we should vote. My vote, we should not vote on the article text. So I'm being in aligned with
Okay.
Alice here to say that I would prefer not to vote on the text itself.
I think I'll try to make a summary of the board position, which is we very much desire to see these projects go forward. We think that the progress that's been made is very good in what the handout may look like. That we want to see more concrete conclusions on what this article will be in the handout before making a formal vote, but we're very positive in the direction it's going. Is that it? Is that getting nods?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next topic. I'm sorry, I am running behind, so I'm going to defer to public comment some of the questions I see waiting. The feasibility funding for the solar task force under consideration. Dean, Jason, did you want to take this?
I can give a background and then Dean can chime in if you want to recognize him. So this was, a request from us to just have a quick discussion of the light board. This is a project that has not been approved at town meeting, and the board has not given any, vote on their support for yet, but we're being asked to spend engineering dollars of CMLP ratepayer money on these to study their feasibility and the proposed like Cadmus panel layout that was done years ago. So we just wanted to make sure that the board had some visibility into that request and that we were authorized to move forward with spending ratepayer money on these projects. Because again, we feel like there's going to be public support for this. The select board asked the task force to spin up, and these are seem to be common values across the town, but we just want to be very careful and prudent with ratepayer money and just make sure that the board is aware of these requests and that we can move forward with some kind of low cost feasibility analysis on these two sites.
And to clarify, this would be hiring a company like SDA to mock up what a system would look like and help us get some real detail behind these projects.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of the landfill, SDA has not really worked on slopes much, so we may have to go a different route, but it's similar to that, yeah. So basically looking at the slope, doing soil analysis, looking at drainage, understanding the regulations on capped landfills and how deep you can pour foundations, things like that, just to say, is it feasible and can you give a wide ballpark cost for that project? And then for the CCHS project, just looking at existing conditions of the roof, looking at the as-built for the load and make sure that the structure can support the amount of panels, and then determining with CCHS what the allowable space would be that we could put these panels, just to get a rough count for what could go up there.
Right. And do you feel that we could find a consultant to do this work and have a preliminary details from them before the town meeting process of April?
Yeah, I mean, before the town meeting, definitely. Before the hearing, our hope is to get something from people. We've already reached out and had conversations about this with people, just trying to figure out who the right people are to work on this. We also don't want SDA to pull resources off the middle school project if it's going to cause delays to work on this. So we're trying to line up some alternatives here in these cases based on the expertise needed. But we definitely think we can get something before town meeting. We're trying to get something before the hearing in early March.
And the cost estimate on this work?
We don't have one yet. We've just been talking about who can actually do it before we get to that. I'm guessing under $20,000 for both.
Yeah. Yeah, that's around the number that was in my head. So I just want to make sure the board knows that and so forth. So Alice, your thoughts?
So I just want to go back and say that hearing this cautions me about voting on a warrant article without understanding whether it's even feasible to move ahead. Because if this study were to come back that it is not feasible or not economically viable, then the warrant article that goes to town meeting would also be suspect. So I'm just suggesting that the order of things, it's small change, of course, for the feasibility study for $20,000 or $25,000. But we need to do that before we take a vote on whether we will appropriate another $4.5 million of ratepayers' expense for something that may not be feasible.
Yeah, so I feel the board needs this kind of detail. It is spending a decent amount of money. So I'm happy that it's in front of the board, the request to spend that money. I think I want to see the details on the landfill more than I care about the school's property because I think that project's definitely happening, and I'd like to make sure that questions are answered and that we have more knowns than unknowns when we present this for funding request. The schools, so Jason, the request on the for design on the school side is solely the roof, or is it the roof and the swell? Because I think
when we spoke to Dean, he was really just trying to focus on the roof and to determine the number of panels would the load hold, and what, space is available up there for infrastructure.
And
And the swale is off the table. We're not pursuing it anymore.
all right, so there's no cost related to the swale.
No.
I'd be very curious to see what the cost is to have a front of meter system up there versus a behind the meter system, because I think connecting it directly into the building is going to be pretty cheap compared to running conduit all the way back to the pole and back to the building. All right, so I do want to get a board vote on spending this money to get this detail to move this process forward. Alice, you're my motions lady. Do you mind making a motion saying to that the board would agree to find a consultant and pay for a consultant to create preliminary designs?
Maybe feasibility, not designs.
Yeah.
Okay, feasibility study.
So I move that CMLP moves ahead with a feasibility study for solar installation at the high school, and at a cost not to exceed $20,000 or 25,000 or 30,000. Give me a number that you
Let's say
No.
30 and make sure you include the landfill, I think.
both places.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me try that again. I move that we approve the expenditure of funds not to exceed $30,000 for a feasibility study of solar installation at CCHS building and at the landfill at whatever the address is.
755 Walden. But
There
yeah.
you go. Thank you.
All right.
And
Do you feel, Jason, that the 30,000 is the correct number?
Well, I mean, I don't know yet, but we can certainly get going now. And if we determine it's going to exceed that, we'll definitely update the board next month.
Okay,
But this will get people working.
great. Do I have a second?
second,
All right, so Warren,
yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
and I also agree. So go ahead and hire someone to get more detail on these projects. I think it will help the whole process.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We are out of time. So I'm going to bump the final agenda item to our next meeting so that we can get liaison and public comments. I saw Mark had his hand up earlier. Mark, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I appreciate the presentation on this last article about the Solar Task Force, and I would encourage, especially for the hearing, some at least commentary, if not clarity on what the action the town meeting is being asked to do in terms of how directive it is. Does it mean definitely build this project, or does it allow for some maybe involvement of the light board further down the road to select or modify projects? There's just a lot of options in there. And I think that this is moving to something very specific, and it would be certainly helpful. I appreciate that the warrant article text was actually shown. That was helpful, but I think that especially during the hearing process, we want to really be clear on where the task force is. Is this the final thing, or is it some piece of it? And all of that will be useful for people who maybe haven't been following this quite as closely as the board or the solar task force. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Charlie.
Are these citizen comments that we're into now?
Yes, we're into this.
Okay, I have a very quick question. The flows and schedules that were presented by Jason included a lot of reference to the arrays. I assume, or maybe it's not the right assumption, that solar or the storage part of the project is included in those schedules and is proceeding alongside the work associated with the arrays themselves. I just wanted to get clarification on that.
You're talking about the middle school project.
Yes, I'm talking about the middle school project.
So your question was, is the battery?
Is the storage part of the project
Yeah,
proceeding?
Yep,
It is.
absolutely, yep.
Okay, good. Thank you.
all right. V. Carl.
Hi, Ben Carlson.
Carlson.
Yeah. I just wanted to add a little background to Jason's description of the end of the Affordable Connectivity Program. And Jason gives the PEG Access Advisory Committee, of whom I'm the chair, an update every month. And this certainly was going to come up, in the next meeting of the PEG Access Committee. So at the federal level, it's really been kind of delayed because of the general gridlock. And there's broad, actually bipartisan support for some type of continuation of this program. However, even without it, Comcast and all of the other national ISPs have low-income programs. The main one that Comcast has, which you may have heard of, is the Internet Essentials Program, which is a $10 a month program for, I think it's 25 up and 25 down and 5 up. So that would continue in some fashion. And currently, Comcast on their program is being relatively sanguine. They're even still encouraging people that want to sign up for Comcast for the first time, and in case they're actually, involved with some type of affordable connectivity subsidy, to go ahead and sign up. So at minimum, they're apparently expecting that even if they have to fall back to Internet Essentials, that they'll continue to do that. In the case of Comcast, there's probably about 10% of the families that, based on some state demographics, are at significant financial pressure, and certainly would, benefit from the Affordable Connectivity Program, and currently many benefit from the Internet Essentials Program. So when Jason was commenting on what Shrewsbury was doing, it seems at minimum that, that Concord Broadband should consider a service at the $10 level, even if ACP never gets, completely revived. So, I hope at least that'll give you a little bit of background. And I think that at this point, the next step is really to wait and see what's going to happen, in the next few months, at the federal congressional level.
Great. Thank you. Pamela Dritt.
Pamela, 13 Concord Green. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Mr. Banfield. I would urge us, like we did for the middle school battery project, to ask for more. It's better to ask for more than you think you need, not less, because we can always spend less. But if we have to go back and ask again, that's always more difficult. It also is a real pleasure as a citizen to get more than we expected.
Great.
So ask for the whole 9 million. Don't lower it down because you think you could spend less. And also, when you allowed Jason and the light plant to have a feasibility study, please don't specify more than on solar and battery projects, so that if they come across a great new idea, they can actually look into it instead of saying, that's not in our, because we all agree we need to do more of that. And also, I recommend you financially ask for more, spend less. and allow for studying of more and use language like for example, the two things you want to spend on, but not limited to it.
Okay. Great. Did you have another comment?
Yes, two more.
Oh,
One is that I think it needs to be in the CMLP's priority project list, the control and management, because we need to end up with a virtual power plant that's local, that would really need that, and it needs to start being studied now so that we don't do something that stops us from being technically able to do it eventually. And it also should include things that we don't yet have, like the electric school bus fleet, which we need to have completely electric to use as batteries.
okay. Was that the last two?
The last one was, I agree with what you said about we're environmentalists. We know the benefits of this sort of thing, but the general public doesn't. We need to show the financial benefits of what we're doing here. These are investments that will pay off magnificently, including cleaner air for healthier kids, more reliable power. What's stopping our contribution to climate change? What is the dollar amount that's worth to us? It can't be quantified. It won't even put our cost of power up to the normal cost for regular dirty power. So it's a no-brainer to spend this money.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Is there any other public comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Alice?
Move that we adjourn.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so Bianca,
Yes.
Alice, Warren,
Yes.
I agree as well. Thank you all for coming. Have a good day.